Well, good morning, afternoon, or night. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll get some music for you all. I don't have it up yet, but I want to welcome you. This is Yadita Span. I am a mom. I am a parent of a wonderful epilepsy champion. She is adorable. I am an author of a book entitled Don't Give Up, a motivational speaker, and actually a coach as well. And so I'm here today because I want to talk to you about epilepsy. Okay. Why in the world do I want to talk to you about epilepsy? Well, because one day it touched our lives, me and my child, on the way to getting her ready for school. And it was something that she was not born with. And she has given me permission to talk about this with you. I always like to ask her, do you mind? And so, she wasn't born with it. But I believe it was third grade when we were preparing her for school. She had a seizure, and then she had another one. And so for those of you who don't know, if you have one seizure, which some people do in life, it could be from a brain injury or a high fever or, something like that. And then again, sometimes for some people, they don't even know why this person has epilepsy or why they're having seizures. About 70%, I believe, of people, they just don't know why. It just kind of happens. It comes from what I like to say out of nowhere. And so for her, this happened, and, it was really rough, right? Really, really rough. Really, really. And so we ended up spending, about 5 days on the ICU. I stayed there. I was not hardly leaving to go to work or anything like that. I needed to stay with my baby because it was kind of shocking. Like, what in the world? Where'd this come from? How did this happen? And so I want to talk about it. And I did start advocating, and I, became very, very vocal about it. I did a lot of research, and I started sharing what I learned with her school. She was attending a charter school at the time, and she was in what they would call lower elementary. And so I started to share with the teachers, with the principal, with the dean, with the nurse's office, different things about my child. And then I started having workshops. I contacted the Epilepsy Foundation and contacted the local community epilepsy division because I wanted to start to sound the alarm. I wanted to start to talk about it because when something like that happens to you and it comes from out of nowhere, you want to raise the awareness because you really didn't think that it could have happened to you in the first place, right? And so this was something, even in doing the workshops, I started to find out that there were other parents there as well whose children had epilepsy, but they didn't really talk about it very much. And I get it. Why do you think that is? I can tell you, no one wants anyone to stigmatize their child, right? You don't want someone to treat your child funny, look at them funny, because they don't understand what epilepsy is. And it was kind of interesting as I'm going to start to share some of these stories with you. Some of them I can laugh at now, but at the time, I didn't think they were funny. It was kind of like, did you just say that? Did you really just do that? That's how I felt. I can give you one story. So, she didn't have epilepsy in pre-K. And so when I did see one of the employees who worked at her pre-K, and I told them, this is what happened. She was in a completely different building because now she was in lower elementary and not pre-K. And I told them, and I told the gentleman, I said, my daughter has epilepsy, right? And they said, what do you mean? Like when they shake like this? Right? And they started shaking, and it's a big guy. It's not no little person doing this, right? And so I'm looking at him kind of in disbelief, kind of a little annoyed, all of that. Yeah, it was just like, are you serious? Why would you do that? Right? And so I realized that, well, he didn't get it. The other piece is that not everyone has, and that's like a tonic-clonic. It's when the person clenches up and the release, a clench and a release, a clench and a release. That's where that movement comes from. But some people are children, grown-ups as well, have what you call absence seizures. It's kind of spelt like the word absence. And in a way, it almost is like they are, it seems like they're absent, right? And I say that because epilepsy is a neurological disorder, right? So I know some people say, oh, it's a mental illness. Well, no, it's not. It's a medical condition, which is different. Because regretfully there is a such thing as suit up, and I won't talk about that today. But it's a medical condition, whereas my daughter takes medication in the morning and at night as well. Then she also has emergency medication. So if she has a seizure and she's not coming out of it in a certain amount of time, I'm able to give her the emergency medication, and it usually, thank the Lord, has brought her out. Okay. Let me say that too. So you just heard me say, thank the Lord. I am a woman of faith, okay? And what does that mean? I believe God can do anything. But I also feel like I'm going to have a voice with the community of believers, right? Because I feel like it is important for us to know what to do in the event of a seizure, and also to extend mercy and grace to those who are going through a process of illness. I think sometimes when I say mercy and grace, because there are times when I just feel like we pray and then we believe that God is supposed to answer our prayer like right now. And sometimes, we believe in miracles, signs, and wonders. I do. If you don't, hopefully one day you will. But I also believe that God is the overall, like there's a timing for everything. Okay. All right. So that's me. That's who I am. You might not be that way. You might be an atheist. I don't believe in God. You might be angry. I don't know. But this is epilepsy, different epilodes. And let me tell you about the name. Why did I call this, unapologetically purple? Okay. What does the color purple represent for you? Well, for me, purple represents royalty. It represents a richness, something beautiful, especially, like I said, royalty. But it's also the color of a number of, the color that they use for a number of diseases, including epilepsy. And so I named it unapologetically purple because if you are a person who suffers with epilepsy, if your child suffers with epilepsy, I know what it feels like when people don't get it. Even your own relatives. Now, I'm not saying, my relatives didn't get it. I just think sometimes people just really didn't get it. Because you can look at a person sometimes who has epilepsy if they don't have another disease that's associated, and they look what we call normal, whatever normal is. Like, what is normal? But they look normal. They don't really look like they have an illness. I remember my daughter telling her very, very dear friend went over, that when he came over to play one day. I feel like they were were they 11, 10 years old, maybe somewhere around there. He's homeschooled, was homeschooled at the time. She's homeschooled. And believe me, I'm going to talk about the whole homeschool thing as well. Because I feel like sometimes homeschoolers get a bad rap. I've seen celebrities embarrass homeschool parents on television. I've heard, oh, they're homeschooled, right? But never had the person taken the opportunity, which is a great opportunity for them to listen, for them to ask, okay, well, what made you choose to do that, right? And so some of us had to do it. Okay. And I'll get into that in another episode, but not today. And so there they are, they're talking, they're playing, they're doing whatever. And I'm trying to remember how the conversation, she was writing her book. That's what happened. So my daughter was writing her book, and it's going to be coming out pretty soon because we are not ashamed. I know there was a period of time when she didn't want to talk about it too much because I had to really ask her, like, baby, tell me what do you feel? Can you hear mommy when mommy's calling you? Because they're not responsive. She wasn't responsive. And so she explained to me what it was that she felt. And I'm going to have her come on some of the episodes too, because I think even for children who have epilepsy, it's good for them to have their own community or someone who talks about it. I see some children out there, doing their thing, advocating and sounding the alarm and breaking the silence when it comes to epilepsy. And I love that so much, right? And it's not like we're taking epilepsy and we're making it big and gigantic. We are advocating. It is a reality. And I feel like many times when you're going through a particular challenge or struggle, you do need to sound the alarm. You need to come break the silence, talk about it. Some people aren't going to get it. Some people may not care, but believe me, there are some people that do care. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And so go ahead and sound your alarm. And so she tells him, and he says, he's looking at her, and oh my goodness, he looked like he wanted to cry. And so, and so she tells him what but he says, well, what's your what is that? He didn't know what epilepsy was. And so she, told him what it was. Oh my gosh, he looked so sad. And so, we let him know she's okay. She takes medicine. It's okay. All of that. But at least he was empathetic. You have other people who are kind of like, are people who feel like they know it all, right? And they don't have it. They don't have anyone in their family who has it, or who has struggled with it, but they read a book. So I want to put that out there for people who don't have anyone in your family with epilepsy, or, you don't have it yourself, but yet you've read a book, you studied it. I get that. I'm glad that you learned those things, but please, when it comes down to a person who has it and they're sharing with you and they're telling you about their situation, please don't let the book knowledge get you to the place where you're like, well, yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I read that. I read about it. Yeah, I know what that is. Please don't do that, because if you do, you're going to lose an opportunity to allow someone to be open to you. You're going to lose the opportunity for someone to be able to trust you with this heartfelt challenge that their family is dealing with. And so it's better to say, I've read about it, but how is it for you? Because not every family goes through epilepsy the same way. Not every child experiences epilepsy the same way. It comes in different ways. It affects different parts of the brain. So if it affects like the frontal lobe, it's going to affect sometimes when it comes to the math and the learning. So if you're in the educational system, if you go on the Epilepsy Foundation, I am pretty sure, I think it's epilepsy.org, foundation.org or something like that, epilepsy.org. I'll come back on. I don't know why I don't remember that right now, but I'll come back and talk about that. But they have classes that you can take so that in your school you can learn about what epilepsy is and what to look for. What are the different signs that you can look for in a child who struggles with epilepsy, who has that challenge, who's been diagnosed with that disorder? And so once again, it doesn't look the same for each child. And guess what? There are more people in this world that have epilepsy than you even know. They just don't tell you. They just don't tell you sometimes. And if you're someone who they tell, I hope that you are able to cherish the fact that they were open with you. They felt comfortable enough to open up and tell you. I hope you don't take that for naught, as if, oh well, they got this epilepsy. And I hope that you are not the type of person who's listening to me. And if you are, I hope that changes as you listen to these epilepsy episodes on Unapologetically Purple. I hope that you start to not believe that you know about this disorder when you don't, when you haven't felt what they feel, when you haven't experienced some of the embarrassment that a person with epilepsy feels, who sometimes becomes incontinent. So, because why do I say that? And for those, I've heard that there are people who have laughed at people who become incontinent, who have seizures. Like, come on, can't you find anything better to do? Right? And so, yes, I'm a believer. I'm a God person. I love the Lord. But guess what? Honesty is the best policy. And in our being honest, sometimes we help someone else to change their mindset. So this is a real podcast.